the other thing I wanted to kind of pick up on was this idea of, and I've been saying this is kind of a strap line for my own consulting business for years, that I help companies to build trust through transparency.
Mm,
In the early days, it was data transparency about SMS marketing. And then it moved to kind of GDPR transparency about the data that was collected and how it was used. And what you're really talking about is personal transparency about what's going on, the rotting moose head kind of in the middle of the table. You also talk about having a psychologically safe environment in which to do that. I know it's a really important point. Can you tell our listeners a bit more about how that exists? How do you create it when it doesn't exist?
yeah, and we were talking about the military and life and death and psychological safety. A lot of that research, led by Amy Edmondson, came out of hospitals where it's also life and death, and realizing that higher performing teams in hospitals were ones where people could speak up, they could question things, they could say, "I don't know," or "I've made a mistake," without fear of punishment. And that psychological safety made the difference between patients living or dying in many cases. So psychological safety, I think, and this ability to talk about the most difficult things that are the most difficult things to talk about. This idea that in a self-managing company, we go from my manager or HR sorts out conflicts to we are all co-responsible for creating a climate of psychological safety, a culture that is trust-based and open, and that any one of us has the kind of responsibility to speak up when we notice something is in the way, when we notice there's a moose head. So I think that skill set is often a piece that's missing when people talk about new ways of working, because it's easy to think about structures and processes, and those are important. But actually, it's really vital to develop our ability to give frank feedback, for example, to listen in an active way, to be more coaching, to place problems and ask coaching questions rather than always kind of defaulting to giving advice. So there's a big connection between psychological safety and what my colleague Karen and I and our colleagues at Tough Leadership Training talk about in terms of the communication skills. That those need to level up massively in order for us to work in a self-managed way.